Bitcoin's a ripping like the new Scottie Pippen. We're pumping back in the green, up over 4,300 on the day, recaptured 90 G's, baby. In today's show, I'll be breaking down the latest Bitcoin technical analysis. Now, the BlackRock CEO, Larry Finkmeister, says no one should be surprised if Bitcoin hits 700,000 per coin. Send it. We'll also be discussing in today's show Bitcoin acting less NASDAQ and more like gold, despite the 60% recession odds. That's right, referring to the great decoupling and quoting Max Keiser, Bitcoin's always been on its own vector. Also, we'll be discussing gold hits a whopping new all-time high of $3,500 and Peter Schiffmeister's going wild. We'll also be discussing the U.S. Bitcoin ETFs clocked their biggest inflow since January as the crypto markets continue their gains, as well as Galaxy executive predicts that the U.S. government will accumulate the biddy this year to boost their Bitcoin strategic reserve. Game theory in full effect. Also, billionaire Max Keiser, the high priest himself, says Bitcoin is going to 850,000 during this cycle. I'll be breaking this down for you. I'll also be taking a look at the overall crypto market. All this, plus so much motherfucking more, right here in today's stream. But anyways, if you're new to the channel, very important, smash the likes, subscribe, it's free to do so. Then ring that bell icon, turn on all notifications. That way you receive notifications each and every day when I go live, as we do switch up the schedule from time to time. You don't want to miss out. You know what I mean? But anyways, today is pod episode 1970. We're 30 episodes away from the coveted 2,000 milestone, 2,000 podcasts, just like that. And pretty little bitty's back on the move. We recaptured 91,000, up over $4,000 on the day. I'm your host, JV. It's April 22nd. That's a double 1111, another divine omen. And of course, it's Taco Tuesday. So stack the sats, pick up some tacos, and enjoy your life. But with that being shared, let's kick off today's stream with our market watch, as we do each and every day. So here we go. Bitcoin up over 5,000 today, ripping like a new Scottie Pippen. Trading just shy of 91,000 on Coin360. Even Ether, warm piece of the sidewalk, trading just under 1,700. Everything pumping and in the green. Couldn't ask for a better day in crypto. And checking out the infamous CoinMarketCap.com, the crypto market cap back on the move, about to recapture the coveted 3 trillion milestone, currently 2.84 trillion. The bidding market cap 1.8 trillion, and we have roughly 104 billion worth of volume for the past 24 hours, up 26% on the day. And check out the Bitcoin dominance is going wild, 63.6% with the Ether dominance doing the polar opposite, continuing to move downwards at 7.2%. Sucks to be an Ether hodler, I'm just saying. But anyways, check out top 100 crypto gainers past 24 hours. We got the infamous fart coin stinking up the charts, up 26% on the day. Curve Dow token up 17% and immutable up 15%. Which alts, if any, are you bullish on for the bull? Holla. And checking out the crypto bubbles, we get a visual perspective on a day. And for the daily, it's safe to say 90% of the market pumpy pump it up. And for the weekly, very similar scenario. And for the monthly, unfortunately, I'd say 75-25 red over green. And checking out the infamous Crypto Greed and Fear Index. Today we're 47, we're neutral. Yesterday at 39, last week at 38, and last month at 30 in fear. And checking out the infamous time chain calendar. Damn, I hit it right on the money. 1,100 sats per dollar, broski. Stack the sats. Currently on block height number 893,520. And I'm going to make a prediction. Before you know it, it's going to be less than 1,000 sats per dollar, and you'll never ever be able to get 1,100 sats per dollar ever again in your lifetime. So seize the moment, take advantage of it, pick up some sats, put down those gats, pick up some Bitcoin caps from my man Sergio, of course, over at bitcoincaps.net. And if you don't know, now you know. But anyways, let's transition into our TA, aka astrology for the broskies. And we'll also pull up some of the live charts, of course. Headline reads, Bitcoin traders warn the biddy price rally may stall at 90. Oh no. Well, we were stalled in the 80s for long enough. So just saying, it feels good to be back in the 90s. And here you're looking at the daily chart. You can see the bullishness. I'll pull up the live charts here shortly. Trading View showed the price has been steadily moving towards 89 over the last 6 hours. And we did already capture 91 here just shortly ago. Bitcoin closing on the big 90-91 horizontal area, which acted as the previous range low. A great sign as per Dan Crypto Trades. He also says quite a few resistances close by, but a few percentage moves and you will break through all of them. Break through to the other side. And the chart looks pretty great, but the bulls know what to do. Shout out my bitty bulls. CryptoQuant's head of research also says traders on-chain realized price between 91 and 92 is a real test. And we're getting very close to that 92 level, so the real test shall begin. And also, I just wanted to point out Larry Fink, who is the BlackRock CEO, the largest asset manager in the world. They control over 11 trillion in assets under management, and he believes, according to his own words, no one should be surprised if Bitcoin hits $700,000 per pop. Now, $700,000 per coin is a proper, maybe a 10x from today's price action. So let me know if you agree, disagree with one of the most influential men in the world, Lawrence Finkmeister, as I call him. But anyways, let's pull up some of the live chart. We'll do some live chart action, Jackson, for the broski's satisfaction, whatever it takes. Bitty broskies. So yeah, give me a second to pull her up. You should be able to see live it in your screen. This is via TradingView, via Coinbase, 1 hour chart. You can see mega bull candles being printed left and right, consecutive 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours in a row. Then we finally hit a corrective after tapping 91, and the bullish momentum remains. And zooming out from the 1 hour, we take a look at a 4 hour. The 4 hour chart says it's going up forever, JV. And also mega green bull candle in the past 4 hours. And prior to that were 2 4 hour bull closes before the corrective red forms, which is currently where we're at. So let's go as we maintain above 90,000, looking to retest 91. And zooming out for the daily, this is what I love to see. 3 consecutive, or 4 now, green consecutive daily candles on the daily chart. We do have a red bull target sitting just shy of 112,000, which would take us to price discovery. Currently sitting at 109.3, which was achieved all the way back on January 20th, inauguration day of the Trumpster. Let's continue to print these green bull candles, fam. You already know. And zooming out a little from there, we'll check out the weekly, and as you know, 2 days ago, we got a very strong weekly close above 85, and I told you that was the line in the sand, and if we'd hit that, we'd most likely revisit the 90s, and here we are, 90 Gs, 2 days later. I don't mind these 5% per day bitty pump. You know what I mean? Just let her pump, respect the pump, and do what it do, and sit back and shut the F up. Cup and handle target sitting at 124,000 in play. I repeat, 124. Cup and handle target in play on the weekly. And zooming out a little further from there, we look at a monthly. And the monthly chart says, JV, you're a champion. Everyone watching your podcast is a champion. The bitty broskies and the bitty baddies on the move. So you already know, this month forming a green candle. We still got another week or so left to put a bow in it, but it's good to recapture the monthly bullish momentum because, again, the past couple of months have been pretty bearish for the past 60 days, so it is what it is. So we're on the up and up, family. Next story of the day. Here we go. Bitcoin has officially decoupled. As you can see, stocks have not been doing well. Dollar has not been doing well, but Bitcoin and gold doing its damn thing. So as you can see, the headline, Bitcoin acting less NASDAQ and more like the gold despite the 60% recession odds. That's right. Bitcoin decoupling from the U.S. stock market and starting to trade more like precious metals. And another signal of Bitcoin's growing role as a safe haven asset against the global economic disruption, as we've been calling and saying every day. Bitcoin's price showcasing its growing maturity as a global asset. That's right. It's entering adolescence and it's in its puberty stages, for lack of a better analogy or metaphor. Bitcoin hit puberty. How cool is that? But anyways, Bitcoin staged a 12% recovery in the 2 weeks leading up to April 22nd, despite ongoing tariff escalations between the world's largest trading nations. The U.S. increased reciprocal tariffs on China to 125% as of April 9th, while China raised import tariffs from 84% to 125% effective as of April 12th. Wild, I tell you. Bitcoin was surprisingly resilient amid the trade war compared to the alts. Well, I'd expect nothing less from the shitcoins and indexes like the S&P and 500, but remains vulnerable to the economic recession concerns. We expect gold to be more resilient, although gold holdings could be net sold in case investors panic and want to cover the margin call. This was seen 1 to 2 days at the worst of the trade war earlier in the month. And still, the pretty little bitty will continue benefiting from the regulatory development in the U.S. Bitcoin Reserve related news, particularly with more developments on how the Treasury is looking for ways ways to swap reserves into the pre-low biddy, which is one of our stories later in the stream. Stay tuned, biddy broskies. And while the U.S. Bitcoin Reserve will initially hold the biddy forfeited from the government criminal cases, isn't it ironic? You got criminals confiscating Bitcoin from criminals, drug traffickers, anti-money laundering, tax avoidance. It just is what it is. But as long as it's budget neutral, that's a strategy which is viable for the U.S. government to acquire the biddy, whether it's printing the USD out of the thin air money printer on or trading the gold certificates or whatever other wasteful ways they're just wasting money, like they sent hundreds of billions of dollars to the Ukraine. Imagine they just bought Bitcoin with it instead of supported all these proxy wars. Game changer, I'm telling you. And yeah, Pompliano recently did an interview with Bo Hines, the executive director for digital assets of the U.S., and he said the government may buy Bitcoin using tariff revenue, which is another creative net neutral way for them to acquire funds to use to buy Bitcoin without costing the taxpayers a pretty little nickel. The U.S. is looking at many creative ways to fund its Bitcoin investments. And I guarantee you, Saylor probably already sent the White House a 200-page report on dozens of ways, viable ways, realistic ways for them to acquire Bitcoin using these net neutral strategies. If I know the Giga Chat, I'm just saying. So tariff revenue is another, reevaluating Treasury's gold certificates, gold derivatives, creating a paper surplus to fund the Bitcoin reserve without selling the gold, Bohine said. And also, U.S. recession odds are now risen to 60%, which is pretty wild. Quoting, let's see here, J.P. Morgan analysts from their report, the latest unwinding of the Libertarian Day tariff reduces the shock to the global trading order, but the remaining universal 10% tariff is still a material threat to growth, and 145% tariff on China keeps the probability of a recession as 80%. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think we most likely hit that recession here in 2025? Yay, nay, holla at your boy. And in other news, JP Morgan expert expects the Fed to start easing this September with further cuts at every meeting thereafter through January 2026, reaching a 3% policy rate by June of 2026. At least that's according to the JP Morgan report. Anything JP Morgan says, though, you got to take with a grain of salt. After all, it's the forces of evil. It's JP Morgan. I mean, you already know. One Bitcoin's always going to be equivalent to one Bitcoin. That's a fact, Jack. But anyways, next headline, gold hit a new all-time high. It seems like yesterday was 3,300. Now it's 3,400. Well, now it's 3,500. That's a 31% rally in 2025. Peter Schiff's only been waiting 20 years for this rally. So congratulations, Peter. Well done. As gold reached new highs above 3,500, the Schiffmeister, prominent gold advocate and Bitcoin critic, argued that the precious metal is money, fueling a backlash from the crypto community. Quoting the Schiffmeister here, gold is not just any commodity, it's money, Schiff says, as it barely broke above 3,500. Well, guess what? Bitcoin broke above 3,500 back in 2017. That was like 8 years ago. And while praising gold, Schiff sounded the alarm about the state of the economy, emphasizing that gold's abnormal rally in the past few weeks hold negative implications for the U.S. dollar. Well, he says this is the end of the U.S. dollar's dominance. Life in America is about to change in ways few can imagine. He's actually right there, and dollar's doomed. We all know that. Schiff's comments came amid the gold futures surging to a record-breaking 3,500 April 22nd. Okay, that was futures. While spot gold touched 34.98. Safe to round up $2, right? 3,500 on Taco Tuesday, according to TradingView. Since the beginning of 2025, spot gold gained as much as 31.6%, while the one-year price up more than 44%. Peter Schiff can finally afford that family vacay. Go Peter. The U.S. dollar has seen a noticeable decline year to date, obviously, with the U.S. dollar index tumbling more than 9% thus far this year. Schiff's observations on the state of the dollar in the context of gold's rally received some traction, but many commentators question whether the term money corresponds to gold. Do you consider gold money? Let me know. Quoting an analyst here, I shaved a bit off my gold bar at Starbucks this morning. They accepted it as payment. First time in a while. I didn't know they accepted gold as a form of payment. What are we doing? But anyways, unlike gold, cryptos like Bitcoin are able to serve the payment use case many posters stress. Well, of course, you can use Bitcoin via the Lightning Network, which is commonly used in places like Bitcoin Country, zap some sats using an app, easy peasy. You know what I mean? But he said, I paid for my haircut last week in Bitcoin. That's what's up. I paid for some pupusas using the Biddy when I was in Bitcoin Country. Merchants won't accept gold because how do they test if it's real Exactly. There's no way to verify it unless you know what you're doing. Like at a pawn shop, you have the chemical you put on it. And if it turns a different color, you're like, oh, that's not really gold and such. But the average person has no clue. And oftentimes the average person buys fool's gold. This is a common scheme. I see it from the pawn shop brokers, which I tune into from time to time just to get my eye on what's happening in the markets. And check it. These people buy the fool's gold all the time in a very sketchy situation. Let's say the grocery store, a guy will have all these gold chains and they'll be like, this is worth thousands of dollars. Just give me $100. I'm in a desperate situation. I need food for my family and the world's coming to an end. If I don't get $100, you can have all this gold. And then the poor suckers buy the gold because they're in a desperate situation. They go to the pawn shop. The pawn shop tests it, fool's gold. And one of my favorite quotes from the high priest, gold is the poor man's Bitcoin. So ultimately, Peter Schiff is a poor man, and Max Keiser's a Bitcoin billionaire. Sorry, can't say the same about Peter Schiffmeister. But others believe that gold and Bitcoin should not be seen as competitors because the assets are different in their nature and have different missions. Well, regarding the store of value, I must say Bitcoin is the king. It's the champion because it's the greatest store of value to ever exist. What are we up? 180, 190 million % in 16 years? What's gold up? Yeah, gold is up 30% this year after being stagnated for 20 years or whatever it's been, Peter. But to each their own. I'm not here to convince anyone to do anything. In fact, Nippinator don't give investment advice. He may give Nippinator indicators, but never investment advice. Anything you hear during the stream is for entertainment purposes only. Are you not entertained? Finally, U.S. Bitcoin ETFs clocked the biggest inflow since January as the crypto markets are back on the rise. That's right. U.S.-based ETFs had their largest day of the net inflow since late January when we hit the all-time high. Now, the 11 Bitcoin tracking fund saw a joint. You hear that, bring facts. They saw a joint net inflow of 381.3 million April 21st, largely carried by an 116 million inflow thanks to ARK21 shares. Now it's the largest inflow day for the ETF since the funds had a 588 million joint net inflow. Sparked the joints, broski, on January 30th, days after the biddy hit a peak and was trading within a six-figure price tag. The ETFs have struggled to maintain the inflows over the past weeks amid President Trump's trade war threats. Bitcoin fell below 100 Gs early February, hitting a 2025 low of 74,773 on April 7th, days after the Trump Meister placed the tariffs on every country, which also caused a stock market slump. Sorry, stonks. The Fidelity-wise Bitcoin Origin Fund saw the second largest inflow April 21st with almost 88 million, while Grayscale and the company's Bitcoin Mini Trust ETF saw a joint net inflow of 69 million. And speaking of Grayscale, one of their CEOs or founders, his name is Barry Silbert, and I shit you not, he's now promoting a new shitcoin he's claiming is just like Bitcoin, but better. You can't make this shit up. BlackRock iShares Bitcoin Trust, known as IBIT, the largest of the group by assets under management, saw net inflows reach 41.6 million. About half of the inflows it saw before the weekend trading break. On April 17th, the U.S. markets had shut down April 18th in observance of Good Friday. What's good in the hood? The biddy hood. And trading on Monday, April 21st, all them closed in the red with the S&P down 2.4%, the NASDAQ down 2.5%. That's a collective almost 5%. Meanwhile, the crypto markets are back in the green. Decoupling. And there you have it. Next story of the day. Here's the latest regarding the U.S. government with the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And then we'll get into Max Keiser's $850,000 prediction, followed by some live Q&A. And we're going to help usher in Bitcoin back above 100 Gs, the epic six-figure milestone. And we may even flip this mofo into a pump watch, because we're going to give the broskies what the broskies want. Pretty little bitty going up forever Laura to some Chandy Jams. And that's exactly what you're going to get. Exactly what the doctor ordered. And I ain't talking Dr. Dre. Galaxy executive predicts that the U.S. government will accumulate the biddy this year to boost the Bitcoin strategic reserve. Couldn't agree more. Head of research at crypto asset firm Galaxy Digital, Mr. Alex Thorne, believes that the U.S. government will add biddy to the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Game on. In the appearance on Bloomberg Crypto, Thorne said, in addition to the Bitcoin the U.S. government holds from confiscations, which is allegedly 200,000-ish ballpark, though it hasn't been audited yet. Just FYI, if you don't know, now you know. The world's largest economy will purchase the Biddy and add it to the strategic Bitcoin reserve this year in 2025. Quoting them here. In March, they had the establishment of the strategic Bitcoin reserve in the United States Digital Asset Stockpile Executive Order, which specifically prohibited government from selling Biddy and ordered departments of Commerce and Treasury to find the budget-neutral ways to buy the Biddy, while simultaneously prohibiting them from buying altcoins. Can I get an amen? And leaving the management up to those departments for the alts. I think a lot of the progress has been made, and we got the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, literally saying the Biddy is now becoming a store of the value. You've got a drumbeat from the Bo Hines, the Executive Director of the President's Council of the Advisors on Digital Assets. And let's not forget David Sachs, your new White House AI and crypto czar. It just seems plausible at this point. They will buy something. There will be a buy. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Now, on how the U.S. government would purchase the Biddy in budget-neutral ways for the SBR, the Galaxy Digital head of research shared the following. What you could do is the altcoin, let me repeat. What you could do is the altcoins that are in the sell-only digital asset stockpile, you can sell some of those for Bitcoin. Bingo! Was his name, Bo? Smart man. To be specific, you can sell an altcoin and an altcoin Bitcoin pair and never touch the cash at all. No cash ever has to flow into the U.S. General Treasury. Could be an easier way to get the promises made, promises kept on the strategic Bitcoin reserve. And if you don't know, now you know. And Mr. Saylor, he proposed Trump in the White House at the recent crypto summit, the very first of its kind. He's calling for Trump to purchase 25% of the Bitcoin, which is insanity. That means the U.S. would literally hold 5 million Bitcoin. Michael Saylor already has 2.4% of the supply, by the way. He just surpassed, I think, 530,000 with his most recent 555 million purchase, which we covered yesterday, which was announced. But anyways, very exciting time to be alive. Couldn't agree more, Peter. Your kids are going to call you legend. And I'll dare say everyone watching the stream right now is a legend. So give it up for yourselves, legends. You wouldn't be here if you're not a legend. All right, fam, now for our featured story of the day. Billionaire Max Keiser just said that Bitcoin is going to $850,000 during this cycle on the Jimmy Dore show, which he was recently a guest on. So let me share this with you. I also transcribed it word for word from the video clip, and also shout out Vivek for making the post, which brought it to my attention. He wrote here, Billionaire Max Keiser just said Bitcoin is going to $850,000 per coin this cycle, and that's right, he says within the next 5 years, which is a hint that we may have an extended cycle. And paraphrasing him, actually word for word, quoting him, I did this earlier. Bitcoin should trade on parity with gold in terms of market capitalization. And what is the gold market cap right now? Can someone look that up for me? I would speculate it's probably close to 20 trillion, considering it just hit a new all-time high of $3,500 today. But let me know. Someone let me know in the chat. Which means it can easily go from 85,000 a coin, which it was like 2 days ago, to 850,000 a coin during the cycle. Obviously, that's a 10x factor, which is a 1,000% gain in that ballpark. So you have 1,000% return in 5 years, he's saying. I think it's a reasonable expectation. Agreed. For Bitcoin, as it achieves parity in market capitalization with gold, which it definitely should, because it does everything gold does, but it does it better. Couldn't agree more. Bitcoin's the ultimate store value, way better than gold. Bitcoin has true scarcity. Obviously, it can only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, whereas gold has relative scarcity. They'll just continue to find more in the earth. So there's no comparison. And when it comes to being borderless with Bitcoin, you could memorize your seed phrase and travel the world, and it's unconfiscatable. You can't say the same with gold. It's obviously, you take it on with you on a plane, you got to sneak it up your anal, and if you're lucky enough to smuggle the gold, it's still stuck up your anus. I mean, common sense. I'll stick with the Biddy any day of the week. Also, obviously, Bitcoin is divisible. With Bitcoin, the transaction is the settlement. It's perfect money. It's impregnable. It's un-F-wittable. It has everything going for it. So if gold can achieve a 20 trillion market cap, I'm with with Max, that I believe that Bitcoin will be on par with the gold market cap, only a matter of time before it takes that away. And I think gold will eventually trend tread towards zero against Bitcoin over the long haul. But you guys let me know your thoughts on that. Another prediction Max came out with is 2.2 million, which he ultimately 10x his original prediction, which was originally 220,000 due to all the bullishness of what's going on in the market. So I want to touch upon some of that. And he also says Saylor can buy Manhattan with Bitcoin, which he recently did a post about. We'll touch upon that as well. And what else? I think we had one more thing. He also says Bitcoin has always been on its own vector. As you know, it became very obvious here as of yesterday and a few, maybe last week when we decoupled. But I've been saying this for a long time because I understand it as well. Bitcoin is on its own trajectory. It's always been on its own vector, and it will always do its own thing. It's not controlled or always connected with the S&P. Just sometimes it has that visibility where it seems to be doing that, but it will always be on its own trajectory because there's nothing you can compare it to whatsoever. And I truly do believe that. But let's dive into the 2.2 million prediction. Here's another post. This was back last month in March of 19th. He wrote, Bitcoin is unique in the world and history of money and finance, and that by definition there is and can never be a single point of failure. There never has been. That's a fact, Jack. It doesn't matter how much Bitcoin MicroStrategy, now known as Strategy B, buys. They can never change the protocol. In fact, they favor the protocol. That's right. He says they favor the protocol ossification. This is game theory, which has not kicked in yet. 100% guaranteed it will. And when it does, 2.2 million per pretty little bitty in play. Couldn't agree more with that. And I love that post. It gets a repost from yours truly. And shout out to the Bitcoin Libertarian. He says Bitcoin is unstoppable. The game theory is just beginning. I couldn't agree more. The global hash war in full effect. So he says it doesn't matter how much Bitcoin MicroStrategy buys. They can never change the protocol. So Max continues, although Stack and Bitcoin prefer protocol ossification, which really means they prefer to keep Bitcoin unchanged. This way, the Bitcoin system remains predictable, which makes Bitcoin stronger as the digital gold and store of value. And he also once again mentioned his ultra bullish prediction for the Bitty, stating that 2 million per Bitcoin is still in play. In fact, he's calling for 2.2 million, which is double my bull scenario for the year, which I've been calling for 1.1 million in the perfect setup, right? Perfect storm, stars are aligned. He insisted Bitcoin is unique in the world and history of money and finance, since by definition there is no place even for a single failure in the way Bitcoin works, thanks to the genius mind of the infamous Satoshi Nakamoto. Keiser expects game theory to kick in 100%. Therefore, he says Bitcoin likely to reach 2.2 million in the future, but he doesn't give a specific date on when. It just says in the future. So just do note that. And by Bitcoin game theory, Keiser implies further adoption by nation states in the future and more institutions and states admitting Bitcoin as a reserve asset, adopting Bitcoin for the treasury, and ultimately getting exposure to the greatest asset to ever exist for mankind. So far, a major step in adoption has been taken by the news of the U.S. President administration as it begun forming the strategic Bitcoin reserve of the country after Trump signed that executive order to make that happen. The U.S. already holds about 200,000 Bitcoin, equal to more than 16.8 billion in fiat. And if you don't know, now you know. Also recently, this was an interesting post he shared. Saylor keeps talking about Bitcoin as the cyber Manhattan. At the rate the U.S. is failing, strategy is succeeding. I predict Michael Saylor buys Manhattan. And also a reminder, every day is a good day to buy Bitcoin. And if you don't know, now you know. Broskies. And there you have it. Let me know if you agree, disagree with the one and only High Priest, Max Keiser, and his call for 850,000 within the next 5 years, potentially this year in 2025. Let me know and I'll read your comments out loud. Welcome everyone to the Q&A segment of the live stream.